Hi friends, it's Becky, and today is the first day of my earrings every day challenge that I have challenged myself to make a pair of earrings every day for the month of April. And it's just one pair a day. That's at least one pair a day. And so that's what I'm going to be doing just for this month. And so this is the first pair of earrings that I'm going to be making. And I'll add this to a little playlist so you can follow along if this is not the 1st of April anymore and you want to see some of the other things that I've made. But what I'm going to be doing with this is making myself a pair of earrings using some things from the La Dolce Vita Jesse James Beads Magical Mystery Bead Box. And the reason I'm using this is because I had actually set aside all of these pieces to make some earrings with when I was making another project. It was in the middle of that project, and I'll put a link to that one in the description below as well so you can see the necklace that I made with that. And I was going to get to the earrings and then I never did, and so I put all of these into a little baggie and I was like, this is my little earring kit. I will get to this eventually. And I don't want to start my challenge with some coulda, woulda, shouldas, so I'm going to get back to this thing that I had intended on making before I even start doing any other earrings. So the pieces from that kit, or from that Magical Mystery Bead Box that I'm using, are these ceramic like chicken beads that we've got. We've got a couple of these drops. I'm calling them chili pepper drops, but they're more like brios. And then we have these sort of mini diagonally faceted coin beads and a couple of these deep bead caps. I'm going to be using them with the little chili pepper beads so that we've got some of these going on. Now, these are the beads that came from that kit and the bead cap. I've also got a little spacer from my stash and a head pin that I'm going to be putting the beads onto. I'm using some ear wires that I made. And I am going to be using this leather chain. I think this is the limoncello leather chain that was made specifically to go with the La Dolce Vita Magical Mystery Bead Box. And this I got from SilverSilk. It is leather with a very fine gauge wire knitted around the outside of it. So it gives you that shiny feeling, that shiny look. It just adds a little extra to that leather. I'm also going to be using some SilverSilk findings. These are the double bead cap or cord ends. And for these, you can put the capture chain or the leather chain inside of them. And so I'm going to be using these for the earrings as well. And I'm going to be using this beautiful, gorgeous chain that I fell in love with when I opened this box. It is also going to be a part of this design. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is set aside one of each of these. Oh, 2 jump rings as well. We're using jump rings and some 20 gauge craft wire. So I'm going to set aside one of each of these for the second earring. And we're just going to do one earring together. And then I'll do the second earring on my own. Actually, I'm going to film it in fast forward motion without all of the descriptions to upload it to my shorts, because that's what I usually do when I do the earrings every day. So in order to figure out how much of this chain I'm going to be using, I'm going to go ahead and stick one end of my chain through this and then put the other chain end on here. And then I'm gonna just find my middle part. It's a little harder with these little leaves in the way. Nope, not there. It might help if I stuck this in here. Move that out of the way. And it looks like this is the link that I need to cut. This is so that I have an equal amount of chain on either end. All right, so speaking of cutting, for tools, I am going to be cutting my wire with these flush cutters, as well as my chain link. I'm also going to be using some chain nose pliers for opening and closing jump rings. I may use this to make a loop. In fact, I probably am, especially for the head pin, because I'm going to need to make a loop on this. So I am going to be using my round nose pliers for that. And I think that's all the tools that I'm going to be using for this. All right, so that's all of our materials. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to make my drop first because that will inform me on how long my leather chain is going to need to be. So I've got this. I put the little flowery spacer down here at the bottom so that it's kind of decorative. And then I've got my drop on first. I put my deep leafy bead cap on right over that. And directly above that, I'm going to put my little chicken. And then, so that there's something between this dip in the chicken and where I want to put my little loop on my guy, I'm gonna just stick this little round diagonal guy right there above the chicken. All right, and now I can bend this over, and I'm going to make a simple loop at the end of this. I'm going to measure about 1 centimeter away from the bead, and I use the side of my finger for that. You can use a tape measure or a measuring board that is about exactly 1 centimeter if I look at it right there. And I'm going to cut this off. There's not enough wire on this side for me to hang on to, so to keep the wire from going everywhere, I'm just going to tip down into my bead mat so it goes into there instead of flying off in all directions. Then I can use my round nose pliers to roll this wire back and make a simple loop. All right, so that's the first part. Now I'm going to measure how long this is going to need to be because I do want it to dangle. And I think that that is going to give me enough room for it to go into the clip. So I'm going to cut my leather wire, again using my flush cutters, right there. And I'm going to cut a second length, exactly the same length, for my second earring. All right. Sometimes there's little bits of wire on the ends. You can clean that off a little bit using your fingers or using some pliers just to get those little teeny bits of wire out of there so that they don't get in the way. All right, and then these are going to go in there about just a little ways. So I'm going to start wire wrapping this below, just below where these need to go into. And I'm going to do the wire wrapping before I put them into the connector, because you can see they've got these little jaws in here, and when I squeeze it closed after I put these in there, it'll hold it tight. So I'm going to start my wire wrapping here. on one end using some of this 20 gauge wire. And I don't need a lot of it. I'm gonna pull off maybe 4 inches of it. Again, I don't need a lot. And approximately in the middle of it, I'm going to make myself a little bit of a loop right here. By putting it around my round nose plier and then crossing both ends away from each other. I'm going to hold that loop in my pliers, and I'm going to put my fingers on either side of the wire, and I'm just going to rotate it one time, just one time, and leave it so that they're kind of straight across from where that loop is going to be, like that. All right, so now I'm going to take one end of this and I'm going to place this next to it, not over it, not so that it's over it here, but so that it's next to it, and down a little ways from the end, because that end is going to need to go into this guy up here. I'm just going to use my thumb and wrap around this once, twice. It does not need to be a lot of wraps. Twice is sufficient. I'm going to cut it right there. Again, you could probably do this with less wire, but I like having the leverage that the longer wire gives me when I'm wrapping around something small like this that has a little bit of give. It allows me to just use my fingers to wrap it and not to use any wires as well. So now I've got this wrapped next to that one. I'm going to bend up the other side so that it's also next to this one, like that. And I'm going to pinch the wires together and just use my finger to go around and between those wires. And again, you don't need to do it a lot, just twice is fine, especially with this thicker gauge wire. Give that a little cut right there in the back and tuck that end in to the leather. So now I've got my 2 pieces of leather chain sticking up. I've got a little teardrop shape with the leather chain there. And that should still be long enough for my little birdie to hang out inside of it. And now I'm also going to be looping these around the whole thing. So let me get one end of my sparkly chain attached to a jump ring. Just want to get the very last loop on here on this chain. There we go. So now that that's attached there, I'm going to loop this into this central loop. Come on, buddy. Okay. And then close that jump ring if I can. This is going to be funner than I thought it would be. closer to the end. Bloop, bloop, bloop. It's just the fact that it's so unwieldy, so I'm gonna set that on the ground while I close the jump ring so that it's not trying to, you know, escape. So now I have that end of the wire, and I'm just gonna loop it around this just a little bit. And I'm going to loop around the other end here just a little bit and hook this end onto the end of that wire. Go into here. Again, I'm setting it down so that it isn't rotating around and out of my grip while I'm just trying to close this jump ring. All right. So now I have that. We're gonna plop this chicken right in the middle of that. I'm gonna swing open this loop, hook it onto that same loop that's right there in the middle of all of this fun stuff. Jingles, the jangles, the sparkles and bangles. There we go. Now let's get in there, close up that loop. There we go. Bloop. So now I have our little chicken kind of hiding in the midst of all the leaves. But he can still swing around in between these. And now I can put these into here. Let's get these separated because there's two separate channels that these need to go into. They should fit all the way in there. All right, and once those are in there, here, this one's actually a little bit better for this. I can close, I can just crimp that closed. These will stay right there. Just double check that that's in there good. Yep. You could even try and scooch this wire up. Maybe. Nope, it's fine. Just fine right where it's at. Turn my chicken around. There he is. All right, so now I can put on my ear wire, and I have a chickeny earring. Whoop. That is not going in that way. So let's try this way. There we go. Sort of love it. Sort of love it a lot. All right, so that is going to be my first earrings for my challenge. And again, I'm going to make a little short of this, doing it the other way. Hopefully it won't take me as long to do that. And I hope y'all are enjoying and having a great April. Talk to you later.